digital is fantastic at certain things. It's really great at targeting, it's really great at measurement and analytics, but it can be quite cold. And I think what we've seen over the years, if you go back 20, 30 years to the classic age of advertising, then people didn't quite have those precise targeting tools and those quite precise measurement tools. So they had to rely on these kind of really powerful emotive images and words, all the classic TV ads that you've seen and the classic print ads, and it almost felt that those kind of skills had been lost a little bit, or that people had, because digital's so measurable and you can see ROI so easily, that I think a lot of people have shifted their focus into digital, which is great. We wanted that to happen, but maybe a little bit of that magic dust has been lost, that focus on how do we actually make a decision. It's okay firing a message at me at the right time, but how powerful is that message? And I think that's the other part of it. That's the heart piece, isn't it?
When we look at the audience, we talk a lot, don't we, about the buyer journey in terms of the different phases of the buyer journey, in terms of the awareness stage, the consideration stage, and the decision-making stage. Yeah. And I think the motivations and the elements that those audiences are seeking is very different depending on who they are, but also very different in terms of where they are in that buyer journey.
Yeah, and you also mentioned earlier, it depends on the kind of product. Some products, if we were selling commodities and high volume products, then, there's a lot more logic and a lot more targeting involved in selling those big media. We don't really do that sort of stuff. We want to sell products where it's a story, it's a dream, it's a fantasy. We got multi-million-pound apartments, we've got yachts worth 5 million, 10 million and more. People don't buy these things rationally. You don't see a banner ad that was particularly well targeted and you think, oh, I'll buy a yacht this afternoon. So, we're trying to engage people in a story, and we're also trying to engage them emotively, as you said. We're trying to, ignite their imagination, ignite their passion, ignite their interest in these products. And tell them a story and lead them on, as you said, a journey. And at some point, that journey might start to move down a funnel, and it might move from this awareness interest thing into more of a conversion-based thing, where some of that targeting and conversion stuff might come in at that point. But certainly at the top of the funnel, we've got to paint pictures. We've got to sort of capture people's interest.
And as a business, in terms of the prospects that we talk to, and to be honest, a lot of our customers, when they became customers, there's a massive emphasis in particularly the luxury and the premium space of mass spend at the top end of the funnel, mass spend at the bottom end of the funnel. So at the top end of the funnel, it's about spending lots on media to target a very percentage of a percentage of a percentage. And then there's a lot of spend in terms of the sales office potentially at the bottom end of the funnel. But there's this real gulf and opportunity that we see in terms of the actual engagement. And for us, as a brand engagement agency, it has to be consistent across all touch points, right? And we find that particularly in the luxury space, it really isn't. There's not a lot of engagement. There's not a lot of thinking about those different phases of the buyer journey, thinking about where people are, why, what sort of motivates them, what influences them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, 20 years, 25 years down the road into this kind of digital experiment that's been going on, and we're still finding people running what are, to all intents and purposes, 30-year-old strategies. It is a media strategy, and it's a blanket media strategy. And as you say, when you start talking about high-value products and ultra high net worth audiences, you're talking potentially 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000,000 even for some of these products. And, to think about spending your money on traditional media to reach an audience that specific is frankly a little bit odd in today's day and age, So we've got way better ways to deliver those messages, but the message still needs to be powerful and emotive and all the kind of things that we said. But yes, we do see that a lot still out there, don't we? We see this big emphasis on advertising in a very old-fashioned way, in the paper, on the TV, whatever. And then we've got a sales office, and people still seem to expect people to see an ad and jump in their car and drive to the sales office and buy whatever the thing is. And we all know that that's not been the case for nearly 20 years now. We see the ad and we go and Google it, and we watch some videos, and we go on social and we ask for some referrals, and da 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 da. So there's this whole bit in the middle where we build the story and we build the propensity to actually want to buy that product. And so many brands that we meet are still not doing that. It's incredible.
Particularly in the luxury sector as well, value is really a perception by and large, right? So, and I think the story that a lot of luxury brands don't do is, it's called the labor illusion, but obviously the more that somebody can understand about a product, where it's made, the craftsmanship, the materials, the journey, now even more so the ethical, sustainable journey that product and materials might have followed, the more you know, the greater the understanding and therefore the perception of the value. And it's why you're going to spend 40, 50 grand on a watch, not £10 on a watch.
Yeah, and even at a lower end of the scale, if it's a £4,000 or £5,000 watch, for instance, how do you pick one from another? How do you pick a Rolex from a Tag or whatever else in that subset, So there's lots of things that those brands stand for. One might be sporting and, racing heritage. Another one could be a more stylish thing. It could be about mechanical things. This is how the brand tells its story. And we see brands that do that really well. And it could be something as simple as, Innocent Smoothies, which is just an incredibly well thought out brand. The name fits, the packaging design fits, the kind of incentives that they get involved in, and the help the aged stuff with the knitted hats and all this kind of stuff. It's just a really well integrated brand all the way through. And not coincidentally, they can charge a premium as well. So the tub of pureed fruit juice sat next to it, which is an own label one, is £1, and theirs is £2. And yet they're outselling the other brands. So, that's the amount of value, isn't it, that you can build into brand. And as you say, particularly for luxury items, it's almost where all the value is. These things are mechanically perfect and in lots of ways very, very similar as a product. It's the story that kind of differentiates whether I would want that particular one or not,
And that's exactly where our target audience for ourselves as Woven is those design conscious brands, right? It's brands that understand the power and the need for storytelling, right? And having that consistency across all of the interactions from a brand perspective, which so often there's huge disparity between what the offline version of the brand is and what the online version of the brand is, and then all the way in between at many, many different layers of that.
And as you said, the middle of funnel piece is always the poor relation, isn't it? So there could be literally millions spent at the top of the funnel on advertising. There could be stores, incredible stores with incredible sort of in-store experiences, but the bit in the middle, the content, the storytelling, is often woefully underfunded or non-existent in lots of cases.
Brands want to differentiate themselves, and actually a lot of them still are spending loads of money in terms of media and advertising, and actually when they hear the proposition they go, that's exactly how we need to differentiate. So actually part of our remit as well is an education and taking people on that journey. It's so obvious when you say it and they hear it, but actually there's still this really fixed mindset within the sector around it being all about that and not about the storytelling and content.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because again, 20 years of this sort of stuff, and digital in particular is one of those industries that everybody thinks moves super quick, and everybody feels like everyone's implementing all of the latest things, and actually that's not really true. In many, many cases, there are some brands that are doing that really fast, and there are some amazing sort of cutting edge people out there that are really pushing boundaries. But there are also a lot of people still running that 30-year-old marketing model, and they've not really adopted a great deal of any of this stuff. And there's a huge gap, as we say. You point it out to people and they get it. We always try to think, don't we, about, where do you get your biggest bang for your buck? And I think that's it. If a client walks through the door and says, this is where we are, what do we need to do? Sometimes they'll come through the door and say, we want to do this. And we'll take a look at that whole piece and we'll say, well, the social media strategy is not really joined together. You don't really seem to have a cohesive kind of creative, output across all these channels. And by the way, where is the middle of the funnel and all these kind of things we talked about. So, and we've got real examples of this where people have walked in thinking, this is what I need to do. And actually we've gone through that entire process with people. And Again, we've put inbound into the business, inbound marketing, we've trained their sales teams, we've looked at all of these different touch points, and and that's how ultimately you drive success, isn't it? You've got to get all of these things aligned, and sometimes we see just huge disparities. This bit's great, but that bit's non-existent, or this bit's mediocre, and this bit's working quite well. And it's actually trying to get all of those things working in harmony, isn't it?
I mean, our commercial aim is to forge a long-term strategic partnership, and that doesn't mean just being yes people, and it is, like you say, cascading up to the ultimate strategy and all the things we've just mentioned, and then saying actually the biggest bang for your buck is this, and then this, and then this, and having a roadmap laid out.
Yeah, because that can vary over time as well, can't it? It can't be like, okay, the first 3 months we've got to fix this, because if we don't fix this, there's not much point doing anything else. So that roadmap is really important, isn't it, in terms of trying to take a client on that journey to say, hey, there are 15 or 20 things that we want to deliver. How fast do you want to go? If you want to do that really fast over 3 to 6 months, then it might be quite expensive and it's going to be a lot of work. Or this might be a 3-year roadmap for some of those clients,
So what's Woven's mission, and what does making brands work beautifully mean for Woven?
Okay, well, I think been in the sector for a long time, and I think one of the realizations that I had, having run a sort of more traditional digital agency in the past, was that I felt that very few of those agencies, whilst they're great at kind of effectiveness and targeting and data and all that kind of stuff, I felt that, maybe the creative wasn't always at that sort of super high refined level that a more traditional agency might produce. So what I really wanted to do, I suppose, with Woven is combine both of those things. And so I guess making brands work beautifully is a very deliberate choice of words. There's 2 elements to it. We want to make things work. So it's very much about delivering results. It's very focused on actual deliverables and value for the client. But we want to make it beautiful as well. And that sort of helps in terms of the kind of brands that we work for and the positioning that we go for as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk a lot about head and heart. And by that, we mean the head is we're really driven by insight, be that audience insight, be that marketplace insight, really delving in and understanding why people do things and what they want and what their objectives are and what their pain points are, etc. But then we're equally as fascinated by the psychology of things. Why do people do what they do? What motivates them? What influences them? And actually the role that creative can play in that, in terms of a lot of the clients we work with have very emotive purchasing decisions. They're big buys. We work a lot in the premium and the luxury space. So really, in terms of that heart, how can we use creative to really evoke an emotion and be really distinctive? And again, putting those things back together, you have our mission and our proposition of making brands work, but beautifully, and being distinctive.
We're always trying to figure out what are people really buying. And there's an old adage in marketing that, no one wants a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole in the wall. And that's been around forever, and lots of people know that analogy. And then Seth Godin, that a lot of people will have heard of, and if you haven't, you should read some of his books if you're in marketing, came out and said, look, well, who wants a hole in the wall? What use is that? What you actually want is, you might want to put a shelf up. And actually, well, why do you want a shelf? Well, because I've got a pile of crap on the floor. So, well, I'm going to put the crap. Why do you want to put the crap on the shelf? Because I want to have a sense of control over my environment, or a sense of achievement, or I want my partner to come home and pat me on the back and say, oh, you've done a great job. So there's some sort of emotional, you bought that drill bit because you wanted a pat on the back and you wanted to feel good. And that's so interesting, isn't it, in terms of why do people buy things? And we spend a lot of time trying to answer that question, because everyone comes in and goes, we sell yachts, we sell this, we sell watches, we sell... Yeah, but why does anybody want that thing? Why do you want a watch? What is the... And again, this comes back to archetypes, it comes back to the kind of business you are. What kind of emotion are those people looking for? How do they want to feel about that product? And then this is where your process comes in, Miles, in terms of how we start to dig for those kind of truths, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially, when we are trying to find out what people are really buying, we need to eventually land on a proposition that tells us that, and we can hand over then into strategic and creative teams. And the way we go about that is through our kind of three-step approach in planning. So first step is to learn everything there is to know about that brand and get to know, why they do what they do, who they are. That can include brand archetypes as well, running through that process and really understand everything there is to know. And we will often package that back up and send it back to a client in the form of golden threads and say, have we understood this correctly? Yeah. What have we missed out? Because we really try and succinctly define who they are in one deck, which can be pretty tough. And then we kind of move on into the relevancy section and find out about the customer and what are they looking for, and what are they really looking for beyond a product. What are they looking to feel? What gap does a product or brand sit within in their lives? We can do that. Obviously, we kind of really go to town on trying to get to that through a lot of qualitative, quantitative research, through kind of primary and secondary research. We just kind of really try and understand as much as we can about the customer, because especially from a planning perspective, we want to put the customer at the heart of everything we do. You can have the best brand in the world or best product in the world, but if no one wants it and it's positioned wrong for the customer, we're doing a pointless task. And then we'll try and find something as well that's differentiated within the markets. That's a real deep competitor audit of understanding brand positionings and products the competitors are selling, so we can stand out. And within one of those sections, normally kind of your customer section, you will find the gap that is trying to be kind of fit into at an emotional level. You'll want it to be distinct, different, and you'll want it to be true to the brand that we are working with. And you kind of then have that proposition that is that one line of, this is actually what we're really selling. And through things like we said, brand archetypes can be really useful to achieve that. So like we mentioned, for Princess, it's not a yacht, it's experience and it's beauty and it's wonder.
It's really interesting because, even amongst luxury brands, and almost specifically amongst luxury brands, what you tend to find is there's a lot of people that are sort of artisans, so take jewelry brands, for instance, people like that, they're all about making amazing stuff. That's what they do, they make incredible, amazing stuff, whether it's a watch or an incredible piece of jewelry and it's beautifully designed and all. But a lot of these people are makers, a lot of those brands have grown up from that sort of basis, and they're actually really product orientated because they're so excited about the product and they love the product and they put so much care and effort into the product. They think that that's how you sell that product. You tell everybody what the product is and it's like, oh, it's this and it's made of that and da-da-da. And as you say, they're part of the story and they're part of that kind of labor illusion story. It's how you build value, but they're not necessarily the reason you want the thing in the first place.
No, I think that's seen very prominently from an example that we often use internally of Patek Philippe. They could absolutely go to town on how their watches are crafted and made and the labour illusion and all of that stuff. But especially when you're at that price level, that starts to become a hygiene factor. So the line that they use, you never really own a Patek Philippe, you merely look after it for the next generation.
Beautiful.
Suddenly, complete emotional level, and you buy into it. Sky's the limit.
And they've just given you permission to feel good about spending 15 grand on a watch, because actually it's a heirloom, and you bought it for your grandkids. You get to wear it, in the shop. But how clever is that? That's smart. And just going, hey, look at the winder and look how shiny it is, and blah blah. That's not going to do that, is it?
No.
So I think that's the kind of stuff we're looking for, isn't it? Is where do you find a proposition or a line like that? And can you imagine that's obviously anchored in genuine insight? People probably do have that process that, hey, I can justify this because, hey, the grandkids are going to have this in 200 years, whatever. So another thing we talk about is experience debt. We've talked a lot about experience debt. We see it as a really big issue out there, particularly when dealing with luxury brands who, which is where this shows up more, because there's probably more of a reason to pay attention to this if you've got a high value product that could potentially have a conceptual kind of sell attached to it. So do you guys want to talk a little bit more about what experience debt is and why people should pay attention to it, particularly in a sort of luxury space?
Yeah, sure. I think it's, in summary, it's the disparity between the experience that an audience has, or a consumer has, or a prospect has with a brand offline versus the same or not the same experience online, and particularly profound in the luxury and premium space. So offline, you go into a store, it's let's keep them in the store, let's give them a real experience, you know. And when you look at the offline version of essentially what it would be online, you'd get a corridor with just checkout saying buy now, buy now, buy now. And it's just completely different to how it should be for luxury and premium brands. You know, we've talked a lot today about being content-led, being experience-led, and actually taking a buy now button away. If a prospect is in the awareness or the consideration stage, and they're buying something that's worth whatever, but 20,000, 1 million, 5 million, then actually it's about the labor illusion, it's about the craftsmanship, the materials, the story, you know, and that's probably what they're more interested in, as opposed to saying, right, I'm absolutely going to part with 20 grand right now on my card without knowing any of that. And that's the experience there. And I think things like, as we talked about earlier, the metaverse actually, and technology generally is hopefully going to pull that void together. But right now, what you've got is the last couple of years, you've got a huge digital transformation, or digital incrementalism, as we say, where a lot of brands that are traditionally offline have jumped online. They've got Magento sites or Shopify sites. And actually what you're seeing now is, right, okay, you've done that and you needed to do that, but now let's step back and actually have a proper think about how to take that offline experience that you paid millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds for, and put a little fraction of that online and see what we can do for content and experience.